Hello everyone and welcome to another reading vlog. This week we're going to be reading A Court of Silver Flames. This is like a year coming now. Last year, I think last summer actually, I read the first 4 books in the ACOTAR series, or 3 books and a novella. And I wanted to pick this one up, but I really wanted to wait until the paperback came out, but it took like, I think this came out in like February of 2021, the hardcover, and it is September of 2022, and this just came out. So it's been a long wait, but I wanted this to match the rest of my collection, and while it is very rare that I prefer the experience of reading a paperback over hardcover, these books just have like the perfect flop. And I love it. And like, they flop open and the spine doesn't really break that much. Like, it's perfect. So yeah, I kind of feel like the rest of the world has already read this book and I'm just catching up, but that kind of goes hand in hand with my experience reading the first 4 as well. I was really late to the party on those ones, but I ended up having a lot of fun. Is Sarah J Maas the best writer in the world? Definitely not, but I think her characters are really engaging and I'm like always really hooked in the story, and like I want to know what's going to happen to them, and their relationship development is always really fun to watch unfold. More times than not, I have had a good time reading Sarah J Maas. So I'm excited to pick up A Court of Silver Flames and get to know Nesta a little bit better. Our main character from the first few, Feyre, her older sister Nesta, featured in those books as a side character, but she takes the center stage in this one along with an Illyrian male named Cassian, who was also in the previous books. And this one, if you don't know, takes place after a big war that happened in book 3 and sort of deals with the aftermath and consequences. There's plot stuff happening politically as well, but this really feels like a character study so far, at least about Nesta and Cassian and PTSD and attachment. So I've also heard this book is the horniest of them all. The more Sarah J Maas writes, the more it seems that she favors more explicit love scenes. I definitely had them in the first few books, but they felt a little bit more like vague and like heavy uses of euphemism and metaphor, where at least so far, I'm about 200 pages into this, it's been a little bit more straightforward. So definitely firmly in the adult category for sure. So yeah, definitely keep watching if you're interested in seeing my thoughts on this book. I'm sure it's gonna be a wild ride. Don't eat the book, baby. I am 50 pages into this book and it looks like I've barely even started, which comparatively I suppose is not inaccurate. It's like, god damn, I feel like I read so much. This book's a chonker. Anyways, I feel like we're kind of just like picking up the threads of where we left off in Court of Frost and Starlight. Nesta still being a raging bitch because PTSD, and the rest of the inner circle don't really know how to deal with it. So I'm curious to see how these relationships heal, develop, reconcile. Curious to also kind of revisit a Nesta who knows how to pour her energy into something productive. Curious to see where it goes. I almost forgot how much Sarah J Maas likes to use the phrase like male and female. Whatever, but I have to cook dinner soon, so I'm gonna take a break. But I feel like 50 pages isn't too bad for the first kind of sprint at this. I'm hoping to finish this weekend, but we'll see. Hello again. I am 231 pages in. I feel like that's pretty good for my first day of picking this up. It's like 750 pages total, so that's a good chunk for one day. I'm enjoying it as usual. Her writing is compulsively readable and I'm enjoying the characters, but it does feel like kind of repetitive, and I'm like torn between feeling like this could have been edited down a lot because there's a lot of like training scenes between her and Cassian, and then also feeling like
yeah, this is a journey that Nesta's going on for self-improvement. It's not just going to happen overnight. So I can see why Sarah J. Maas didn't make me want to rush things, but it does, as the reader, come off feeling a little repetitive and drawn out, even though recovery like this doesn't happen in the blink of an eye. So I'm a little torn. The scenes are enjoyable. I enjoy Nesta and Cassian's banter. I think SJM is doing a good job, like, towing the line of, like, yeah, Nesta's a bitch and she says some really awful things, like, in self-defense, but you empathize with her still. Like, you understand this place that she's coming from of, like, self-loathing and the desire to push everyone away so that she doesn't have to face, like, losing them unexpectedly, because at least, like, this way she's got control over the situation. We did start to get a little sprinkling of spice. There's been one scene in particular that I was like, oh, and then it kind of ended. It's a journey. I wouldn't call it a slow burn because these two characters are very actively lusting after one another, but that's been fun too. There's also this backdrop of, like, this sort of political repercussions of the war that was in book 3. I don't find myself caring about that as much. I don't know why. It kind of just feels like we're rehashing things, like, oh, we gotta go collect these objects of power so the bad guy can't do it. That's a little frustrating, because I just feel like, didn't we resolve this already? But yeah, so I'm gonna call it for the night, because it is almost 1 o'clock and I'm really tired. So I will check in probably tomorrow morning. Bye! Hello. It has been a hot minute since I've updated, so I figured I would do just that. I've got Rocket here, hanging out with me, keeping me company as I read A Court of Silver Flames. I am on chapter 32, page 347. We are firmly in part 2 now. Nesta's really coming into her own. We're getting some character development, which is nice to see. She contains multitudes. She's also using her power a little bit more, which frankly sounds terrifying. We have just learned that Feyre and Rhysand are indeed expecting a baby, which is probably the number one thing that has been spoiled for me about this book. I learned that shit almost immediately upon this book coming out, and I think I hadn't even actually started at ACOTAR yet at that point. Was not a shock by any means. I've seen a lot of fan art about little baby Nyx, so we're still after the MacGuffins. Nesta just scried to find out where a mask is. It's in some sort of bog. That's the thing. I think I've mentioned this before, but that part of the plot just doesn't really do a lot for me. It just kind of feels like a continuation of the, we gotta find the cauldron, we gotta find the book. That part's whatever. I'm curious to see how it develops, but it's definitely not what is keeping me flipping the pages. Nesta and Cassian are full on, like, hooking up now, which good for them, admitting feelings. It's not my favorite, at least so far. I still have a whole half a book to, change my mind. I still definitely prefer books 1 and 2. Just, I feel like the pacing and the plot and everything just was really tight, and that's something I think Sarah J. Maas has lost a little bit as she continues to write, and her editor isn't quite as harsh, but yeah, it's a fun time. I just started part 3 of A Court of Silver Flames, Valkyrie. I feel like everyone overreacted. Like, what Nesta did was not that bad. If I were Feyre, I'd want to know too. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Moving on. Finished A Court of Silver Flame. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. There was a point in the middle where I was like, this is meandering as heck. it was bouncing back and forth between like never-ending training sequence to never-ending boning to like just recycled plot from the previous books. But Sarah J. Maas knows how to write a good character arc. I will say that. And I find myself caring about these characters despite myself. And it's almost frustrating. If you had asked me 2 books ago if I had cared about Nesta, I would be like, not really. She got me at the end of ACOWAR. She annoyed me during the novella Frost and Starlight. She won me back in this one. And I think that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Hello. I just woke up from a nap, but I'm finally ready to talk about A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I feel like I've said a lot of what I need to say on this already, actually. Just as like a sweet little wrap up, this was too long. It was fun. I flew, like, considering the fact that it is 750 pages, I did get through it quickly. Like, it took me 4 days to read. But when I talk about and then that just has a lot to do with her pacing and the way her chapters break up and the readability of her prose. Her books are very compulsively readable. When I complain about how long it was, my main issue is more in like how repetitive everything felt. Where this book is so zeroed in on Nesta's mental health journey and physical journey and like her kind of finding a purpose again. It makes sense for things to, like, she has to establish these healthy habits, and so things inherently are going to feel a little repetitive. And while I didn't necessarily mind it in the moment, in retrospect, I was always like, what was the point of that? A lot of it felt like a bit of training montage, just over and over and over again, as she started working out with Cassian, and then, like, I don't want to say sex montage, but kind of a sex montage with her and Cassian once they started boinking. And that's not to say I don't enjoy a well-written, spicy scene, especially when there's like character development happening, but I don't know, a lot of it just felt like it could have been edited down. At least a little bit. At least 100 pages, 200 if you're being really, really strict. So things I did like. Nesta grew on me. I really connected her with her at the end of ACOWAR. That book was actually my favorite, including this one. That was my favorite for like Nesta. Not my favorite in the overall series by far, but like I thought that one had some of the best Nesta moments. Specifically with like her and Cassian and then her facing Hybern and her dad. I just thought like I really got to know Nesta a lot more, and probably as well as I could have not being in her head. You know, we were in Feyre's head at that point. So while Silver Flames was not my favorite, I did appreciate finally being in her head and getting a little bit more insight as to why she was just consistently pushing her, like, everyone away. She has this very, like, entitled exterior and, like, she's very haughty, but she doesn't actually think that much of herself. Like, it's really the self-loathing that is at the root of her horribleness. And you get that very clearly in this book, for sure. I also like that Sarah J. Maas does not shy away from exploring trauma and, you know, not just brushing traumatic things away. She's really content to let you sit with the character as they process things and try to move on. I think she does that very well. She's done that well in the past with Feyre's character, I thought. I feel like she also cut down a little bit on like the male and like male smirk and like people doing things in a male or female way. Not entirely, but it did not feel like as egregious as it has felt in the past. So good on you, Miss Sarah. What else did I like? I like Cassian, but like he's been likable from the beginning. That was no surprise. I thought him and Nesta makes sense. The plot that was happening kind of in the background for the majority of this book didn't do much for me. I don't want to say she neglected to wrap up some loose ends from ACOWAR, because she definitely like very purposely left those ends loose to address in the future book and like stretch out the series. It just felt unnecessary. I don't know. I didn't care about the human queen, Briellen or something. And there's this other being, Kochi, that seems like it's gonna be a threat. I don't know. Like that just didn't land for me. It didn't feel like she spent enough time really making me care about that plot line because this book was such a character-focused book on Nesta. And yeah, I think finally my favorite thing probably about this book was the commitment to having Nesta establish female friendships with people that aren't her sister or aren't the inner circle of Rhys's court. It was nice to get some fresh faces in the cast and fresh perspectives. We got Emery, who is an Illyrian woman, or Illyrian female, sorry, who's had her wings clipped, so she's kind of like, she exists in a very sexist society, and training with Nesta really like helped her self-confidence. And then we also have Gwyn, who is a librarian, and she was a priestess in like a temple that got ransacked by Hybern. And I thought that was well done, and I liked how like that was Nesta's chosen family, like found family. Like she still has this connection with her sisters, obviously, but there's a lot of weight to those relationships. So I thought that it was good that Sarah J Maas gave her a fresh start with new people, and like the bonds that they were able to form I thought were good. And I thought the ending where they had to do the blood rite together was really good. I actually wish that had taken more time. It had like a Hunger Games feel to it. And like the fact that that was just like shoved in at the very end, I was like, no, I would have read like 100 more pages of this. So I just thought like the way she broke up those 750 pages that she had to work with just like wasn't how I would have done it or how I would have preferred to read it, but oh well. And yeah, I thought this wrapped up nicely. It didn't leave any like crazy cliffhangers. Obviously we're gonna be getting more stories in this world. We have to address, you know, Elaine's whole situation as well. But like I'm not dying for the next book, you know, I'm not like frothing at the mouth for it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna wrap it up now because my camera battery is flashing at me. Let me know down in the comments if you've read this book, what you thought about them. I would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thank you again for watching. Feel free to check out my links down in the description box below. Follow me if you aren't already, like this video perhaps, and have a lovely day. Bye.